Star Trek's Mirror Universe is not an alternate timeline. It's plumbing, a sort of Jungian shadow that reflects the zeitgeist of the Prime Universe. Never mind that sounded like a philosophy major after too many Zimas. We know it's correct because...
everything's duplicated. Almost. Another Enterprise? Spock with a beard?
Another Captain Kirk, another Dr. McCoy,
and that holds true regardless of what period we peek into it.
Most places and ships that are found in our universe, like the Cooper, exist here. The same goes for people.
When we first encounter the Mirror Universe in the original series, it's firmly in a violent, expansionist, conquering state. This corresponds with the early period of the Federation, when it's still in this very vibrant, exploratory, expansionist phase, albeit in some different ways. But both of them are manifestations of a relatively young and very vibrant, strong society. And humanity is the driving force of the Federation. It is in many ways our empire. Now, it's one that manifests through a unequal partnership that respects individual liberties and things of this sort. However, it is still very much a human-dominated entity, which we can see by so many of the high-ranking officials being human, how the ships are all of human design, on and on. Contrast this with the Mirror Universe, where that expansionism happens in this brute force conquest of other cultures. Both share the same underlying drive to expand, to exert influence, and in both cases that is a manifestation of a young, vibrant, and confident society. Later, when we see it in Deep Space Nine, the Mirror Universe's humanity has been brought low and enslaved. Now, if we look back at the Prime, we see that this corresponds with a period where the Federation has matured into a major power, possibly, arguably the major power in the region. It's a time where that youthful exploration and discovery has kind of taken a back seat to diplomacy and peacekeeping, all the minutiae of maintaining a superpower. It's worth noting that as the Federation slides inexorably into war with the Dominion, it doesn't do so with a sense of patriotic fervor or some kind of a moral mission. It sits in dread, waiting to be attacked. Should we really be surprised that the mirror of that has that old militarism replaced with a sense of dejected defeat? But there's a deeper layer to this. In the early incarnations of it that we see, the original series and Enterprise, we have to remember that humanity still is deeply scarred by a cataclysmic war. Now, Trek lore is a little vague on the timing of this, but the important point is that in this period of Trek history, we still have the memory, in the earliest cases in Enterprise, the living memory of this civilization-ending conflict. Is it any surprise then that the collective shadow of humanity manifests in this very militaristic, very expansionist, very violent shadow society? By the time we see it in Deep Space Nine, life in the Federation has become ridiculously easy. You can ask a wall for cake and ice cream and it just manifests. I mean, the wealth and prosperity in the Federation at this period in time is just insane. In influence and military might, the Federation towers above most of the other powers in the quadrant, and humanity sits at the very top of that tower. Now, the significance of this is that it can skew perceptions. We're seeing a society that hasn't had to deal with real serious problems for generations. It's been too easy for too long. Relatively small moral failings become amplified by their comparison to an unattainable ideal, rather than to the struggles to reach that level of prosperity. For all the noble deeds that have been done by the Federation, one perhaps begins to wonder if all of our prosperity has been gained at the expense of others. We wonder if our place at the top of that hill might be undeserved. And if it is that we are at that pinnacle because of wrongs we have committed to others and things we have stolen from them, then one could begin to wonder how we should be punished. Well, DS9 shows us the fall of the Terran Empire and enslavement of those who were once masters. But what about all the non-humans in the Mirror Universe, I hear some Zima Sipper ask? Well, there are a lot of ways we could speculate on that. Perhaps each species, each civilization has its own version of that Mirror Universe, Jungian shadow. And if so, then perhaps in this era of galactic civilization, those concepts, those shadows are beginning to merge as these civilizations begin to blend together, mirroring the cultural diffusion that's happening in the Prime Universe. And if that's the case, then each race's identity would be defined in part by its perceptions and relations of the others around it. Just as the Mirror Universe sometimes has people who have died in the Prime Universe still kicking around as though they're sustained by the memories of the people that they knew. In any case, the periodic glimpses into the Mirror Universe are needed to make us aware of our own worst impulses. But also, it reminds us that we haven't succumbed to them because we aren't that Mirror Universe. And here we should also consider Trek as a historical artifact, and bear in mind that it was written in the 1960s by a veteran of the Second World War. And that experience infuses Trek at a foundational level. So, in many ways, the Federation is a brighter reflection of America. Both have grown out of cataclysmic wars and expanded beyond humble beginnings, and both have invited others to join their journey along the way. And in both cases, things have gotten easy. So easy that we begin to wonder if maybe we don't deserve it, and we begin to amplify every historical sin and moral failing. It spawns exaggerated shame and self-loathing, which is not logical. Finally, my parting note here. I say all this in the Black Hills, sacred to the Lakota, and taken from them through force and deception. Now, it would be easy, knowing that piece of historical reality, to conclude that we are that Mirror Universe. But other facets of our history speak to great courage and compassion, and we should not forget either. Because the truth is that, in some ways, we are the Terran Empire. But we're the Federation too. And we can acknowledge the dark reflection without being consumed by it, either in self-righteousness or self-loathing.